Hello, my name is Celeste from Black Metal Artists, and today I'm here with the person behind the project Zercon.
Hello.
Now, to get started, can you just introduce your project to those discovering Zircon for the first time, and I guess tell us about how this project came to existence in Massachusetts?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, Zercon is definitely a solo project, at least for now.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not really sure where it's going. That's part of the excitement is I kept the first album kind of in the most like middle road vision that I have for black metal so that I can branch out a bit from there. Black metal definitely is like a special genre for me. I think looking back that it's like one of the first heavy genres that I got into and like really in depth, all the way back to like early middle school. I was listening to a lot of black metal and particularly kind of like bordering on atmospheric or symphonic black metal, some industrial black metal, and a lot of melodic death metal. Um, And as I've gotten older, I kind of had like a seasonal relationship with black metal. Like when it gets cold out, I find myself putting on some Wolves in the Throne Room or Weakling or some other more nostalgic albums for me. But this past year, recently, I kind of like found my way back into the genre in a bigger way and started finding projects and artists that I wasn't familiar with. And I just have always had the idea of doing a black metal project, but it was always on a back burner until I started discovering some of these bands that, for me, I found really interesting. That were inspired me. Like all right, it's time. I'm doing this. Probably the biggest one being Bluthaus Nord. Um,
Oh, that's awesome.
I find really fascinating and engaging and different. And Urfaust, I think I'm saying that right. um, Bands that are like kind of like you can tell right away this is black metal, like you know immediately, but they're kind of like on the edge of what is possible for black metal, and I kind of find that uh, just interesting, and that's how it all got started.
Yeah. No, not a lot of people talk about or really go into like the more avant-garde part of it, which is like that's like the later era, like 2000s onward. It's the most been a lot more avant-garde stuff. You still get like the traditional like and the rawness from a lot of projects. Even now, like there's so many projects that want to copy that stuff, but there's still some really good stuff in the avant-garde part of it, like the later on stuff, even edging towards like post black metal and stuff. There's really good stuff out there.
Yeah, and also like I got to revisit a lot of kind of classics that I didn't do a deep dive on, like certain Mayhem albums, things
Mm.
like that. Re-listen to some Bathory. And that was fun too. And like many people, became a fan of Dark Throne. It's not very, not a very original thing to say, but they have great sounds, and I was surprised. Like that's probably the one subgenre that I had no experience with was the kind of raw side of black metal, and
Mhm.
I found myself, especially listening on headphones, finding it like very immersive, having these kind of lo-fi sounds.
Yeah, no, they're super good, but I get it. Some of those were like some of the first that I started listening to when I got into it. So yeah. Um, Now back to your project. Your debut, full length, Absolute Power carries like a very intense and like commanding title. What is the main concept or message behind the album?
It's tough because I do have like a vision in mind. It's like decidedly a little abstract.
Mhm.
Um, I can't remember who wrote like a nice synopsis about it and used the word mysticism, which I was surprised by. Like mysticism is like a really important interest of mine, but
Mhm.
I don't. There's very few instances where I felt like I was putting that into the lyrics, but I also um, in an attempt to not have the lyrics feel like too self-important, I was writing songs really intentionally for the lyrics and found them coming out kind of cheesy. And so as a way to combat that, I like kind of put myself on a timer and used kind of song titles and loose ideas that I had to kind of quickly write lyrics, and then I worked them into rhythms that would work. But overall, Zircon is definitely like a character in my mind, and
Hmm.
it was inspired by a historical character, Zircon, or sometimes referred to as Zerko, who's, for lack of better terms, kind of like a, if you're familiar with Breaking Bad, kind of like a Jesse Pinkman of the medieval times. He was this poor dwarf jester who was kind of passed around between different warlords and was like mistreated, and definitely not like a jester in the classic sense of like
Hmm.
they're kind of bardic and have some kind of like wisdom to them. Like this was just kind of strictly like a victim put in, like he was just this laughing stock surrounded by power. And I'm not going to get political, but there's obviously a lot of room for imagination, imagining like this kind of twisted servant kind of figure amongst great power. So that's kind of like a loose place where the idea came from, just looking at power and like where I think reasonably metal and black metal in particular kind of looks at power and faces it with kind of like rebellious themes. Normally, I think it's kind of like a spiritual rebellion. Um, and sometimes it kind of like claims that power, like, look at me, I have a flail in my hand and like, deal with this whole situation that I have. But I think that there's also a lot of great themes and lyrics to be had kind of on the other side of the street, kind of like Weakling's Dead as Dreams album, this kind of like ferocious, kind of like nasty underdog um, feeling that is also like equally powerful, but it's kind of like from a different angle, if that makes sense. I don't know if
Yeah.
any of this is making sense.
No, it's okay. It definitely does. Especially with like explaining like the more meaning behind it. Um, but it's definitely interesting and good that you kind of had it like a middle road type of idea and stuff like that, like you mentioned. And sounds interesting. Especially for someone who may be more curious about like, oh, what does this name and stuff mean and whatever. Um, Speaking of meaning, now some of the songs in this album, like Godhead, the Monarch, and Rituals of the Elite, definitely suggest themes of like you've mentioned already, like connected to like power, control, hierarchy. I guess what was the inspiration in this lyrical direction of the record?
I definitely had like some songs I just had like a song title for, and then I was like, I'm gonna work this in
Mhm.
somehow. But for the overall theme, um, definitely like the thing, like just thinking of people with excess power and like the
Mhm.
abuse of power. It seems like uh, oligarchy is definitely like on the menu for discussion, whether it's political or otherwise. There's just a growing distance between the people with power and people without power. Um, and not just in the West too. I think that's like it's an eternal thing. It's like something that you can look all the way back to medieval times, for example, and see kind of like serfdom for, just as a example. But definitely um, looking at kind of like the looking at the powerful class, like however you define that for yourself, and kind of just like being angry at that in some way or exploring it in some way, whether it's kind of like loosely conspiratorial and kind of mystical sounding on Rituals of the Elite, or if it's simply just kind of like pointing at the person with guns and screaming at them on something like Godhead.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I do like those different interpretations and that obviously I have heard many times before like people just pick a song title and then kind of run with it. So definitely an interesting concept to hear about more. Um, Now, musically, Zircon blends aggression and atmosphere throughout the album. I know you briefly just went over it, but I guess if maybe you want to pick more of like a starting point for this influence, what bands, albums, or movements within black metal, I guess, had the strongest influence on your sound?
Sure. So like while Bluthaus Nord and Urfaust were like a big part of what got me being interested in wanting to make it, those
Mhm,
sounds aren't really that much here on this album. Instead, like I wanted to do kind of something like a good bass line, knowing that I am quickly like I'm prone to experiment and make things weird. I don't want to do that this
mhm,
time. I wanted to do something that is like lightly atmospheric, some synth sounds for sure. Um, Something kind of like I want like there's an album that is very important to me. I think of it as Dimmu Borgir's most underrated album, Godless Savage Garden.
mm,
To me, it just has like the perfect like I think technically it would probably be called like symphonic black metal, but it's still just full synthesizers, kind of like old 90s synth sounds. And it sounds like, to me, in a way, it sounds um, like early atmospheric black metal, but from like a different angle, kind of like I mean, other albums that I think of too, of like not exactly sound wise, but like maybe mission wise, like what I was going for, like classic, like the Storm of the Lightsbane by Dissection comes to mind, or in the Nightside Eclipse by Emperor,
mhm,
things like that, where it's like it sounds good. There's something going on, but it's like that it's black metal and it's like doing the black metal thing. Like I'm just putting on a black metal album, and it's not going to be. There's nothing that's going to like take me out of that. That being said, I definitely um, I wasn't expecting to do some clean vocals that ended up on the album, just because there were certain parts where it just didn't sound right to have screamed vocals. So I was like, well, it looks like I'm doing some clean vocals, and let's see how it goes.
yeah, no, I think I think that's great and it's totally fine. I mean, there's definitely in the examples you give, like there are some examples where they even use clean vocals like at random in certain songs or albums. Like even with like the one track I don't remember from Dissection where there's like it's not really like actual singing, but it's like this like almost like humming that happens, and I love that part of that one song.
Yeah, I
Um,
think when done correctly, like for that part of the song, it can like really like make things feel
mhm.
epic or like
Yeah,
surprising in a way.
yeah. So I think that's interesting. Now the album flows with a very deliberate and pacing structure. Or I guess with pacing and structure. Now did you approach this album as like a complete journey or rather than just a collection of songs?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely put some good thought into like the track ordering, and like how songs would feel track to track. That being said, I like intentionally I didn't want to like overproduce anything. And for me, like
Mhm.
when I was considering like transitions between songs, I was like, that doesn't feel like what I'm trying to do. I want it to feel like a little rough around the edges, not like a mixtape or anything, but like um definitely I think the way that I thought of the glue, rather than like sonic transitions between songs feeling natural, more
Mhm.
like trying to pace it out of like, okay, this song's very fast, this song's kind of mid tempo, let's kind of break that up a bit, and having like clear kind of templates when producing that kept everything kind
Mhm.
of sounding similar.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. Um, Speaking of production, the production on this full album, it feels like raw yet powerful. What was the recording process like, and how important was the atmosphere during production?
That's a cool question. I went to school for music production. I dropped out because art school is not real unless you drop out.
Well, then maybe you'll become famous because a lot of famous people they dropped out of school. So you
Um,
might be on the right track.
so yeah, I'm in my little home studio right now. I have a billion pedals to my right, a couple guitars to my back. Um, and yeah, thank you. That's like kind of raw, but like punchy is like exactly what I was going for. Like
Mhm.
I was listening to a lot of things with what I would not like hi-fi. Like there's a point when you're like, this is too produced for this genre. And like I definitely have like I don't know exactly where it is, but I definitely have like a barometer in my mind of like how I prefer black metal to be produced. Um so I was listening to probably like a third of the black metal I was listening to while recording the album as inspiration. A third was probably like raw. And the other two-thirds were somewhere in the kind of mid-production, what I would
Mhm.
consider. Um, and definitely, like I think some people definitely quickly identified like this sounds 90s ish,
Mhm.
and that's definitely kind of what I was going for. Um, this is a challenge too because like I like towards the mastering phase, I was getting some advice from a friend of mine who produces professionally, and he was like, the drums need to be way more compressed, this thing, that thing, and I kind of took it in, but with a grain of salt because
Mhm.
um, I think black metal is a really unique genre when it comes to production. There are just so many rules that apply to many other genres, even other metal genres, that when you get to black metal, it's like, it's not nasty enough, or it's not like we need like way more high mid frequency on the guitar than we normally would, or something like that. So you just
Mhm.
spend the time and kind of tweak. And I kind of do the thing that I think has become more popular of kind of producing as you go, so that by the time
Mhm.
you have enough tracks for an album, they're all like pretty close together as far as like sound. So you don't have to do too much from there. So I definitely had a much more hands-off approach than I would with something like if I was making like EDM or something like that. Even like um, the guitars, like there's um, obviously multi-tracking, but minimal multi-tracking. And one of the lead guitar for the most part is like completely dry. It's like two distortion pedals and like no amp modeler, just like really bright and in your face. And then the other one is kind of more warm for the rhythm section. And it just worked, just experimenting. And I probably recorded about like 20 practice songs,
Mhm.
and there were a few that were really close, and then there was one ultimately that actually was the only song that was a practice song that became a real song, Godhead.
Mhm.
No, sorry, it wasn't Godhead. It was um oh my God, I have to pull up the song. This is embarrassing.
That's okay.
It was The Fall. That one
Mhm.
was that was like a 30-second practice song, and I was like, this is the sound.
Mhm. Okay, that's interesting. You could definitely, if you still have them, eventually have it like a later type of like old track thing, which what I've seen with a lot of bands do. Like they have their practice tracks and they make a separate compilation for it, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, Now going back to I guess some of the tracks, The Flower of High Wraith definitely stands out as like a unique title within the album. Could you explain, I guess, the meaning behind this track and what it represents?
Yeah, that one is definitely unique. I had in mind that like for whatever reason I wanted to do something that was like abstractly kind of like a gothic romance
Mm,
song. Um, and I think just like on my commute to my day job, I was thinking about like what that would look like, or like I think of like the atmosphere a lot when thinking of a song of like where am I? And I definitely was like visually referencing the album cover from Godless Savage Garden from Dimmu Borgir,
mm,
this kind of like overgrown, dark, foggy, um, probably like more dimly lit than the rest of the album, which a lot of it I wanted it to feel very like fiery
Hmm.
and bright and kind of urgent. Um, and there's also um, kind of like a concept from Rumi, a Sufi mystic. Um, he talks about it, but I think it's just a Sufi concept in general of this kind of like uh, what's referred to is like a nostalgic longing for the divine, like this kind of um, sadness, but like a nostalgic thing that like you're separate from the divine in some way. So there's a couple things that like wound up in a blender.
Mm, okay. It's really interesting. Um, Now, as a independent black metal band from the US, what are some of the challenges and advantages that you've experienced while creating and promoting your music?
Definitely time, like, with living costs just like skyrocketing and
Hmm.
most people not being able to like even think about buying a home. Most of us work a lot. You get home, you know, I'm getting older. Finding the time um to put into this. Like I tend to work very efficiently, and when I start something, I get obsessed. So like I started recording in probably October, and I thought I was going to be
Mm,
done in like a month, just because I had such a clear uh, vision. And it's like that's really for me. Like if I have a clear idea, like it's getting done one way or another.
mm,
Um, but things come up and unexpected turns happen, and for me, the challenge was kind of wrapping it up. Like I think I have a lot of friends that are in music and a few very close friends like that are really great musicians, but for their own projects, never find the time to like sit down and start like actually doing the thing. I think
mm,
I think a common theme that I've seen in a lot of artists is like what you might call like approach anxiety of like, I want to do this thing, but I've made it so important that even just starting, like even opening up the software or even like picking up the guitar or whatever your first step is, seems daunting. When
mhm,
if you just take a step back and are just excited about something, the anxiety doesn't really matter. Obviously, there are going to be things that when you're done with it, you wish you did differently or you wish you made sound a bit better. But I think most the main challenges, aside from having enough time to make something with the level of seriousness that something might deserve, I think the other pitfalls that independent artists fall into a lot are definitely psychological, emotional. Be
yeah.
strong. Record the thing you want to record.
No, I
Like
agree.
record.
Especially with releasing, I've heard people be like, "Well, I've been so hesitant on releasing this," and they try to be perfectionist with it, that they get too nervous and they take too long, not too long, but too long in their eyes to actually release it. So I
Yeah, which is a
definitely,
bummer. And I've definitely been there. Like I've recorded a good amount of projects, but like Zercon is the first, like in my mind, the first like legitimate metal project that I've had. And like being a huge metal fan and going to school for music, I'm old now. I'm in my 30s, and it's like absurd to me that it took this long. So
yeah,
whatever your hangups are, if anyone out there is listening, just do it. Just have fun. Rip the
yeah,
band-aid off.
for sure. Now, as far as like, I guess blackmail in the US goes. Um, how do you feel like I guess the state of the genres, especially in maybe your area? Because I've heard different parts of like the US so far, and I guess I'm just interested in what your thoughts are, especially where you are, if the scene is big or if it's small or something like that.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I think that there are enough. subgenres, that like the health of individual subgenres
Hmm.
together as a unit are like healthy. And like I
Hmm.
recently um met someone who organizes a lot of shows up in Portland, Maine. Uh,
Hmm.
he organized a show for that dungeon synth fantasy synth artist Questmaster, and he said that Questmaster was nervous to perform at this venue of his, which is funny. But he was like, "Oh my God, I feel like I see everyone, around the age of 20 wearing a black metal shirt in Portland, Maine right now." And I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting." Um, I think a lot of alternative music communities exist predominantly online now. Um,
Yeah.
but that being said, like someone who works at a local produce shop around the corner from me has like a blackened death metal band that is like quickly like they're doing all kinds of shows. There's definitely scenes. I think with anything alternative, depending on who you are and your lifestyle, you might have to look for it, but
Hmm.
it's doing stuff. I think black metal has staying power. I think it's specific enough um, that it's not going anywhere. And as far as like subgenres, like I just online, I feel like I see a lot of people um, interested in like the DBSM subgenre, which like I like some of the sounds of. I struggle with the theme a little bit personally. There are definitely some really impressive artists in that subgenre. It's not my personal like
Hmm.
top tier, but I think that genre is very popular right now. But what do you think?
Me, I guess I would agree in that part. I honestly, like for me, what I do is I just focus on this kind of stuff and the scene around me more. I'm not on like bigger platforms focusing on what people think or say. Like I feel like with what you just mentioned, that's more like for like TikTok and stuff, like people who are like, oh, I love DSBM and stuff like that. Um, I enjoy that genre, but I enjoy certain artists from that genre that I don't think are too hyped up as much. Like they are bigger, but they're not like talked about a whole lot more. And I think it's just because like I enjoy them because the way that they express in their music and their vocals and their instrumentals are so different than the other more popular ones that are brought up on that like I feel like they deserve the recognition more, even if like they're popular or whatever the case may be. Like even if you don't like that genre, like the stuff that I like from it, I feel like people could like because it doesn't really feel like the same as the other bigger ones in that genre.
For sure. Yeah, there's a lot of variety, and like I think it's interesting that some of those artists like pull in even kind of like an Agalloch type of sound where there's like these sad acoustic guitars, or like it feels very like you've walked into this like creaky abandoned house. Like there's
Hmm.
definitely very unique vibes, whereas opposed to like the giant snowy mountain of traditional black metal burning down buildings and things.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of as like a final wrap-up question here. Um, what are your future plans for Zercon since this release? What can listeners expect as far as like maybe physical editions, any live shows, or even new material soon?
Yeah, I have like pretty clear plans for two different albums. I'm not sure if the next one will be out by the end of this year. Probably more likely like early 2027.
Hmm.
Different sounds. So apologies in advance if you loved the guitar tone. It's probably going to be different, but um, yeah, as far as like physical releases, I like the idea of like very limited physical
Hmm.
releases. There's just something fun about like there's only this many of them.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously I'm brand new, like no one knows who I am yet. So
Hmm.
it's also practical, but uh, very excited. I did find out there's an artist from Germany that I really wanted to work with for the next album cover, and he's taking a sabbatical. So hopefully his sabbatical ends. Benjamin Koenig, I think his name is. He's
Hmm.
done work for I think some dungeon synth artists, but he has this like really incredible, unique style. But um, yeah, I think the next album is distinctly going to be more um, atmospheric for sure.
Hmm.
But then I also have weirder plans. Again, the first album was definitely a springboard to kind of open things up, and I'm excited for it. And I've hopefully I haven't ruined all of the mystique to the project by not showing up today with no face paint on and no flail.
No, it's perfectly fine. There's like a mix of people that they'll show up however they want to, but usually it's like just nothing. And I think that's fine because then you get to see the person at face value rather than, oh, I'm just seeing them in their band or musician image. So
Yeah, if I perform live with this project, Zercon's definitely a character, and you'll see him. He's scary, but
that'll be interesting to
until
see.
then,
Well, thank you so much. I definitely appreciate your time. This was a
thank
great
you.
time.
Appreciate it.
Um, Thank you. And then I hope you have the best of luck with your future endeavors.
Thank you so much.